They called him Hercules once. Then they crippled him for winning too hard and told him to live like a dead man. He did, for 11 years without a word. The story begins at the Do Hotel, where a group of foreign hires are beating a company manager over a soured business deal, laughing that they're doing it on director Gu Junmo's dime, and that he's paying double for the trouble. Chairman Gu Bong-san calls Chairman Lee Ju-woon directly. It's his own son's mess, he admits, but he can't be seen cleaning it up himself. It would cost him face in front of his own people. He asks Lee to send someone to shut it down quietly. Nam Gi-seok, second in command at Ju-woon, takes the job on himself. Before he leaves, he reminds Chairman Lee of something said between them before, that when the time comes, he wants to be the one who steps into Lee's place. Gi-seok finds the foreign men at the hotel and tells them plainly, 3 days to get out of the country, or whatever trouble followed them here will be the least of their problems. Junmo shows up before Gi-seok can leave and needles him about his older brother's leg, asking almost lazily how Gi-jun's been getting around these days and adding that it's impressive he's lasted this long at all. Gi-seok slaps him, twice in front of witnesses. Junmo doesn't retaliate in the moment, but the humiliation of it lands harder than the blow. Gi-seok climbs the hill where Gi-jun has spent years out of sight and tells him Chairman Lee wants him back to take over Ju-woon. Gi-jun doesn't answer directly. Instead, he asks his younger brother, almost offhand, if he isn't even curious how his older brother's actually been living all this time. Walking home that night, Gi-seok is jumped by a group of hired men. He fights back hard enough to hold his own for a while, but he's outnumbered and he doesn't survive it. Gi-jun learns his brother is dead at the funeral hall, a man about to inherit an empire, now a body laid out in a room full of people who owe him everything and did nothing to protect him. Prosecutor Lee Gum-son, Chairman Lee's own son, arrives to pay his respects. Choi Seong-chol stops him at the door, telling him plainly, this is company business, and the chairman doesn't want his son anywhere near it. While Chairman Lee and Chairman Gu talk quietly off to the side, Gi-jun steps directly in front of them. 11 years ago, they told him to live like he was already dead, and he kept that promise. His brother was never supposed to pay for it. He asks if there's anything else he should know. Neither man gives him an answer. As Gi-jun reaches his car, a younger man catches up to him, Cheon Hae-byom, one of Gi-seok's own men. He introduces himself, apologizes for not doing it sooner, and tells Gi-jun he'll take care of his older brother from here. At the police station, officers try to block Gi-jun from seeing the suspect in custody, citing procedure. Gi-jun pushes past them without much resistance from anyone willing to actually stop him. Gi-jun demands to know why they killed his brother. The boy sneers back that Gi-seok looked at him the wrong way. That's the whole reason. Gi-jun threatens to track down everyone involved that night, their families included. The boy, unbothered, tells him to go ahead and kill his own parents too if he ever finds them. They abandoned him and his younger brother years ago and never looked back. Gi-jun finds the rest of the crew holed up at an internet cafe, laughing about what they did. He works through them one at a time, no hesitation. Most of the group ends up on the floor. One of them, Jung Hui-chan, slips out the back in the chaos. At the prosecutor's office, investigators flag how closely Gi-seok's death mirrors the killing that triggered the original coup against Chairman Oh. Both cases involving a chosen successor cut down right before he could take power. One officer dismisses it as overreaching. Another isn't so sure. Gum-son's superior pulls him aside and offers a deal. Take personal charge of the Gi-seok case and make sure it's handled the right way, meaning contained. In return, a promotion Gum-son has been chasing for years. Gi-jun catches up with Hui-chan and presses him for who really gave the order. Cornered and out of options, Hui-chan finally gives something up. A chat room called the Graveyard, where runaway kids take the fall for other people's crimes in exchange for a payout waiting on the other side of a prison sentence. Gi-jun climbs uninvited into the lawyer's car. She's unfazed, asking if he can really afford someone who practices law right across from a police station. She lays it out anyway. It runs like a delivery app, matching clients who want to dodge prison with people willing to serve the sentence instead, mostly runaway boys avoiding military service. She hands him a business card for N-Clean before he even asks. At N-Clean, Gi-jun drops the staff one by one, asking each of them plainly who told them they could have an attitude with him. He corners CEO Sim Seong-won, who insists at first he was only following orders and taking the money, until a beating forces the real name loose, Gu Junmo. The next day, still icing his face, Seong-won gets a visit from Bongsan manager Kim Chun-seok. Seong-won tells him straight, Junmo hired the job on his own, and Chun-seok had better start covering himself, because whatever's coming isn't going to stop with end clean. Chairman Lee reminds Chairman Gu of the rule the two of them built together after Chairman Oh's fall. Whoever causes the trouble pays the price for it, with no exceptions, not even for a son. Gi-jun walks in on his ruined leg and asks Chairman Gu, one last time, whether he had anything to do with his brother's death. Gu says he'll deal with it personally. Gi-jun tells him not to bother, just to watch what happens next. Rattled, Gu starts offering up whatever he can think of. A casino, a duty-free shop, eventually the Decro Hotel itself. Chairman Lee tells him plainly this is the last drink the two of them will ever share. Gu keeps pushing anyway, and Lee finally takes the hotel as a parting gesture, nothing more. Back home, Gu corners Junmo and asks him outright if he did it. Junmo finally admits it. Gi-seok humiliated him in front of his own men, and that was reason enough. Gu tells him even his own father treats him like something scraped off a shoe, and Junmo shoots back, that's exactly why he's been trying so hard to prove himself. Haebum tries pushing Choi Seong-chil into taking action first and gets shut down for overstepping his place. He goes to Gi-jun instead, insisting this isn't just Gi-jun's fight anymore. It's his too, ever since he took over looking after Gi-seok's people. Gi-jun lets him in without much argument. Hae-byum posts a reward through the graveyard for Junmo's whereabouts. 30 million won for anyone who can confirm his car and location. It works almost instantly. Chairman Gu orders Junmo moved out to a safe house in Yangpyeong and tells Chun-seok to personally see him there. No detours, no arguments. Junmo refuses to be treated like a child being walked out the door, but Chun-seok drags him out regardless, just as Hae-byum and his men catch up to the car and force it to a stop, hands slamming against the windows before Chun-seok manages to muscle Junmo free and get him moving again. Song-won, packing up whatever he can carry to disappear before anyone catches up with him, freezes when Gi-jun turns up at his door, asking calmly where Junmo really is. Gumsan presses Choi Seong-chul on whether Ju-woon really stands to lose more than it gains by sitting this out, hinting carefully that crushing Bongsan for good, while the chances there might be worth more than keeping the old peace. Still not fully convinced of what he's been told, Junmo asks Chun-seok directly who this man Gi-jun actually is. Chun-seok tells him plainly, without Gi-jun, neither Ju-woon nor Bongsan would look anything like they do today. 11 years earlier, Chairman Oh sends Ju-woon and Bongsan to seize Busan port from the gang controlling it, needing the port to expand his operation into Japan. The two of them are overwhelmed almost immediately and on the verge of losing everything, until Gi-jun steps into the fight and turns it around single-handedly, earning himself the name Hercules that night. The victory wins Ju-woon and Bongsan Chairman Oh's full favor, enough that word starts spreading he might hand the entire company over to them rather than to his own son, Oh Seung-wan. Feeling pushed aside, Oh's son orders someone to eliminate both men before that can happen. The plot unravels when a recording surfaces of him giving the order directly, leaving no room to deny it. Gi-jun kills Oh's son before the hit can be carried out and tells Chairman Oh to his face that he did it for the good of the company. Ju-woon, standing there, is forced to admit his own part in setting it in motion. He was the one who knew, and he got there too late to stop Gi-jun from finishing it. Within a day, Chairman Oh is overthrown completely, and Ju-woon and Bongsan take over the organization he built. To keep the peace between the two of them going forward, Ju-woon and Bongsan set a new rule. Whoever causes a problem has to answer for it personally. Gi-jun, the man who started the whole chain of events and the one who won it for them in the same breath, becomes the rule's very first case. Rather than have him killed outright, they cut his Achilles tendon instead and tell him to live the rest of his life like he's already dead. It's framed, at the time, as an act of mercy. Back in the present, Hae-byum tells Gi-jun he should have done more to stop Junmo before things ever got this far. Gi-jun tells him it's fine, not to dwell on it. Byung-ho, an old friend from Gi-jun's years running the square, tells him that Chairman Lee already knows perfectly well it was Junmo behind it, and told his own people to drop the matter anyway, a quiet confirmation of exactly how little Gi-seok's death weighs against keeping the peace intact. From inside the safe house, Junmo places a call, ordering a hit on Gi-jun and making it clear this time it isn't a suggestion. It's an order, and it needs to be done right. Investigators notice something off in the case file. Officer Han Seok-yun was both the one who found Gi-seok's body and the one who filed the report, unusual given his age and rank to have been out on night patrol at all. Gumsun orders him brought in for questioning. Chun-seok tracks Gi-jun down and warns him the whole Bongsan family is hunting him now, that continuing this alone is only going to get him killed. Before he leaves, he lingers on old memories from the years they used to run together, back when things felt simpler. Junmo corners Byung-ho and threatens his young daughter directly, warning him that if he wants to protect his family, Gi-jun cannot be allowed to survive what's coming. Byung-ho comes to Gi-jun with what looks like Junmo's real location, telling him he's done with all of it, leaving Bongsan behind entirely, and that this address is where he'll finally find Junmo. He doesn't tell Gi-jun the real reason he's handing it over. Cha Yong-do, a fixer both chairmen quietly answer to behind closed doors, tells Chairman Gu it only takes one person accepting their fate for all of this to end. If Juwon and Bongsan are going to keep coexisting, Gi-jun has to be dealt with, and Gu needs to stop hesitating about how. Gi-jun reaches the location. The men stationed there scramble the moment they see his face. This was never meant to be a quiet visit, and everyone inside already knows it. Junmo has brought in Jong In-seok, a former champion boxer stripped of his title for doping, offering him $1 billion to make absolutely sure Gi-jun doesn't leave the fight alive. Byung-ho puts himself between Junmo and what's coming, telling him plenty of people already want him dead. He should take this chance to disappear and live a while longer. Junmo doesn't take the warning seriously. Junmo beats Byung-ho down with a bat until Chun-seok physically drags him off, but it's already too late. Byung-ho doesn't survive it. Chun-seok, furious, tells Junmo flatly that he's ruined everything, that Byung-ho and Gi-seok are both dead because of him and nobody else. Junmo turns around and beats his own manager for the insult of caring more about a stranger than about him. Junmo calls Gi-jun directly using Byung-ho's phone, telling him coldly that all his friends are dead now, and handing over his real location, daring him to come and finish it. Gi-jun tracks Seok-yun down and presses him hard. He knew Gi-seok's death was coming before it happened, and someone paid him to make sure the case went nowhere. Terrified, Seok-yun doesn't even bother denying it. At an abandoned warehouse, Junmo addresses a crowd of hired men, calling the whole thing an audition. Whoever performs best today gets a future with Bongsan. He throws down a bag of cash for anyone who can bring Gi-jun to him alive. Gi-jun works through the crowd methodically, closing the distance toward Junmo despite the numbers stacked against him, taking hit after hit and giving back twice as many. Mid-fight, In-seok stops and demands double his fee, $2 billion instead of $1 billion, pulling out a recorded phone call as insurance that everyone involved knows exactly what happens if word gets out he took this job at all. Worn down from everything that came before, Gi-jun is thrown onto a table and beaten badly before he manages to grab a broken shard and drive it into In-seok's eye, blinding him and finally turning the fight in his own favor. Cornered and bleeding, In-seok throws out one last taunt, claiming it was actually him who killed Gi-seok. Whether he's telling the truth or just trying to rattle Gi-jun in his final moments isn't confirmed either way. Chairman Gu calls Junmo over and over with no answer until finally someone else picks up. It's Gi-jun. Gu tries to explain himself, to reason his way out of it, but there's nothing left to reason with. His son is already dead. As the fighting finally catches up with him, a memory surfaces. Gi-seok standing in a doorway, teasing him gently about a jacket he never gave back, telling him they really should see each other more often. Believing the fight is finally over, Gi-jun is driving back when another car rams his off the road and into the water. Word goes out shortly after, passed from one voice to another, Nam Gi-jun is dead. A recovery crew hauls a body out of the water near Jara Island, badly hurt but alive, in urgent need of treatment the moment they reach shore. Choi Song-chul reports privately that the accident occurred almost immediately after Gi-jun killed Junmo, raising the obvious question of who could have arranged it that fast. Chairman Gu meets Chairman Lee privately and lays financial records out on the table. a paper trail connecting the funds behind the attack on Gi-jun straight to a shell company under Lee's control. He accuses Lee of engineering this entire chain of events from the start, using Gi-jun to remove Junmo and then removing Gi-jun to clear the way for his own son. Lee doesn't bother denying it outright. He tells Gu they're more alike than either of them wants to admit at this point, and that this only ends when one of them is dead. Rather than wait to be the one ambushed, Lee leaks the time and location of a closed Bongsan meeting directly to the prosecutor's office. Prosecutors storm the meeting and arrest every executive in the room, while Chairman Gu slips out just ahead of them and blames Lee for the leak the second he's clear. It comes out afterward that Gumsun ordered the raid 30 minutes ahead of schedule, without clearing it first with Cha Young-do, a decision that draws immediate suspicion about whose interests he's really serving. Lee corners Cha Young-do, the man he's only ever known as Mr. Kim, after tracing the funds that bribed Han Seok-yun back to his own leaking account, connecting the dots directly to his son's death. Gi-jun tracks Seong-won down again. This time, Seong-won swears he had nothing to do with the river attack. No one paid him for that one. Pressed about Chun-seok and Byung-ho, he admits fear pushed him to have them dealt with, but adds almost quietly that he was also the one who paid to give them a proper burial afterward. Lee decides there's no walking any of this back now and leads his men directly against Bongsan, sparking open bloody warfare between the two sides in the streets. Wounded and outnumbered in the fighting, Gu tells Lee plainly that they're really not so different, both of them willing to do anything to protect a son, and warns him the same fate is coming for him too before he's finally cut down. Lee finally tells Gi-jun everything. Cha Young-do, the man everyone called Mr. Kim, was originally brought in by Chairman Oh straight from the police. After Oh's fall, he stayed on with Lee and Gu and was paid handsomely for his loyalty, more than he'd ever earned under Oh. It was never enough for him. Over the following decade, he used what he knew about both men's old crimes to quietly control them from behind the scenes. Lee reveals the detail that's haunted him for years. It was Cha Young-do who told Gi-seok back then that Oh's son was coming for both Lee and Gu, setting the entire coup in motion and quietly making sure Gi-jun would be the one left to pay for it afterward. Lee offers to hand the whole business over to Gi-jun. Gi-jun turns him down, same as he did 11 years ago, but agrees this time to help Lee track down Cha Young-do. Cha Young-do tells Gumsun plainly to stop dragging his feet. Chairman Lee isn't an easy man to move against, and the longer Gumsun waits, weighing whether he actually wants to belong to this world or stay an outsider forever, the more the window closes. Lee corners one of Cha Young-do's own associates and beats a location out of him in the middle of the street, ignoring the risk of being seen. At a company meeting, Gumsun announces himself in charge going forward. When the older executives push back, he tells them flatly that none of them ever considered him one of their own to begin with, and that anyone who can't accept how things are now is free to walk out the door. Lee's longtime bodyguard, Tai Hwan, turns out to have been working with Cha Young-do the entire time. The two fight it out, Tai Hwan taunting him about a debt between them going back 11 years, asking why Lee never just killed him back then when he had the chance. Cha Young-do goes to Lee's house, not to negotiate anything, but to end him now that he's outlived his usefulness. The two fight. Lee, the very man who let this fixer gain this much power over both families in the first place, is killed in his own home. Before it's finished, Cha Young-do tells Lee not to worry about Gyum-sun. He'll be well taken care of. What Cha Young-do doesn't know is that Gyum-sun is already listening from nearby, hearing every last word of the confession. Gi-jun arrives just after the killing, finds only Lee's body waiting for him, and is arrested on the spot by officers who are secretly on Cha Young-do's payroll, driven toward a remote stretch of road where they intend to finish the job quietly. Gi-jun overpowers the officers in the car before Seong-won steps in and finishes off the last one himself. Seong-won admits Cha Young-do sent him to clean up the scene afterward, but he chose to help Gi-jun instead. He explains this same network of dirty cops has been quietly protecting both Ju-woon and Bongsan for 11 years running. Gum-san, having heard the whole confession firsthand, confronts Cha Young-do directly, revealing he already knows about Kaneyama, a Korean-Japanese hitman wanted by Interpol, whom Cha Young-do quietly gave a clean new identity in exchange for carrying out several of the killings tied to this whole conflict. 8 months earlier, it was Gumsan who first sought Cha Young-do out. asking for a role in what was coming, wanting to unite Jiwoon and Bongsan under himself. His plan: use Junmo to eliminate Giseok and let the war that followed between the two sides clear a path straight to the top. Gumsan tells Cha Yong-do that his father always talked about the things he wanted but couldn't have. But for himself, there's no limit to what he's willing to want. His father never once asked what that was. So he says it plainly, one more time. He wants both Jiwoon and Bongsan. No exceptions, and no one left standing in the way. Seong-wan is jumped by a group of hired men and stabbed several times over the course of the fight. He fights back hard enough to survive it and kill his attackers outright, though word still reaches Cha Yong-do, mistakenly or not, that the job's been done. Gi-jun keeps moving, demanding to know exactly where Cha Yong-do is hiding. Cha Yong-do shows Gi-jun evidence proving Gumsan planned the entire war between Jiwoon and Bongsan from the very beginning and offers him a deal. Take Gumsan out, and Cha Yong-do will back him personally as the new head of the square. Gi-jun turns him down flat, telling him that instead of cutting deals to save himself, he should be asking for forgiveness from everyone he's spent a decade manipulating. Gi-jun kills him where he stands. Gumsan gets word that Kaneyama couldn't finish his job and that Cha Yong-do is dead. He takes the news with barely a reaction, already several moves ahead in his own head. Choi Seong-chol, having watched everyone around him get destroyed by Gumsan's ambition, finally turns on him outright and tells him plainly to leave. At Chairman Lee's funeral, Gi-jun kneels before the coffin in silence, saying nothing to anyone around him. Gi-jun hands Hyebyum everything he has implicating Gumsan and tells him clearly, use it to put an end to this, not to go chasing after more revenge once it's done. At a formal signing ceremony, Gumsan announces himself the new head of Jiwoon, formally merging it with what's left of Bongsan under one roof. He lays out his vision for the future of the square, one where the line between the legitimate world and the shadows disappears entirely, and where, as a sitting prosecutor, nothing he does can ever come back to touch him. Partway through the celebration, the recording finally surfaces publicly, Gumsan's own voice, laying out the plan to use Junmo against Giseok from the start. The prosecutor general cuts the event short immediately and walks out without another word. As the story spreads, the room around Gumsan turns cold fast. His own men tell him plainly it's over, that there's no coming back from this one. Gi-jun forces his way through what's left of Gumsan's men to get to him, one strike enough to put down anyone still willing to stand in the way. Sitting in his father's old seat with a gun resting in his hand, Gumsan admits that now that he's actually taken everything for himself, none of it feels the way he thought it would. What he really loved, he says, was the fight itself, the tension right before it, the moment of landing a hit clean. He admits he used to envy the way people looked at his father, all that respect. Gi-jun tells him plainly that what he saw in those looks was never admiration at all. It was fear, and a weight his father may never have wanted to hand down to him in the first place. Gumsan shifts the subject rather than sit with that. He asks why Gi-jun went to such lengths for a brother who once turned his back on this entire world and walked away from it. Gi-jun tells him he's the reason any of this started in the first place, the reason Giseok is dead at all. Gumsan shoots him, then turns the gun toward his own head without hesitating. Gi-jun stops him before he can pull the trigger, telling him flatly he doesn't get to die that easily, and finishes it himself instead. One last memory rises up before everything goes still. Giseok in a doorway, half joking, asking if he should just quit everything and come work alongside him instead. Gi-jun tells him he wouldn't mind that at all. Everything is over. The one who wanted power felt nothing once he finally had it. Gi-jun can finally rest beside his brother. That was the Korean recap of Mercy for None. If this story stayed with you, stay with me a little longer. There are other stories just as worth your time. So subscribe, and I'll see you in the next immersion.